Welcome to the Surrogacy Warrior podcast with your host, Kimberly Surratt. Join us as we dive deep into the heart of surrogacy, offering insights, sharing stories, and providing advice. Our mission is to illuminate every corner of surrogacy, from the emotional roller coasters and legal battles to the triumphant moments of birth and beyond. Surrogacy Warrior is more than just a podcast. It's a community for anyone touched by or interested in the transformative power of surrogacy. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, lawyersforfamilies.com. Now here's the host of Surrogacy Warrior, Kimberly Surratt.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kim Surratt, your host, passionate advocate for creating families through all kinds of creative pathways. Today, we are talking to Dawn Baker, the owner of U.S. Surrogacy LLC. And Dawn, welcome. I could sit here and gloat for probably a couple hours about how much I love you and how much I adore the work you do. But why don't you tell everybody about U.S. Surrogacy and a little bit of your pathway into this world?
Great. Thank you so much. It's great to be on your podcast and appreciate the invitation. My name is Dawn, and we are entering our 11th year as a surrogacy agency, U.S. Surrogacy LLC. And we have offices in Nevada and in Northern California. And like most agencies, surrogates all over the United States, and the families we help are here domestically and also all over the world internationally. And I have a great team that helps families with me every day. And so I'm looking forward to chatting with you today about some of the great things about the work we do and some of the challenges that we have as well.
Well, yeah, sometimes I feel like we're getting a little negative on my podcast, so I want to make sure we stay positive. But there are challenges. It's been you said 11 years. Mm-hmm. My first surrogacy was 21 years ago. That makes me, I know, can you believe it? But I always talk about the changes in this industry and how a majority of them happened in my lifetime. I can do a timeline and show, I was still in high school. I was still in junior high. And really the only thing they started doing before I was born was sperm retrieval, which not really retrieval. What's
collection?
Retrieval's been being done for eons. So, but yeah, I want you here today because I do think you are cutting edge. I do think you are one of the agencies in our country who are really trying to stay relevant, stay on top of things, make changes as needed. But we have seen a lot of change in our industry. I have, for sure. And I know you have in your 11 years.
Yeah, it's a completely different creature now. And, change from the beginning, really, for me as well. So I can imagine what it's been like for you and the pioneers of surrogacy who've been doing this, 40 years. So I've really seen the biggest amount of change sort of post height of COVID. I won't go so far as to say post-COVID because we're still dealing with that, but sort of that 2020, 2021 timeframe. And as we've come out of that as an agency and as a community and the third party, I really think that there's been significant changes, both in expectations from parents and surrogates, and also what's realistic and what's possible. So yeah, I don't focus on the negative parts of that. I really do focus on change as a catalyst to provide better services and follow best practices. So I'm not afraid of change, but I didn't start out that way. Change was terrifying, and now it's part of every day. And I just figure, if you're changing, then you're growing. And if you're not willing to change with the community and the needs of the people we serve, then you're going to stale. You're going to be stale. You're going to stall out and not be able to really help as many people as you can. So change is a thing for all of us.
It is, and I think it's fascinating that you brought up COVID, only because I taught a class yesterday, and 3 of the questions I ended up answering saying, well, here was the answer pre-COVID, and here's the answer post-COVID. And it's true, it did have an impact on the surrogacy industry. It did have an impact on collaborative reproduction. And one of the things that we've really started to see a shift in over time, of course, is in what surrogates are getting, are receiving for their pain and suffering, for undergoing these journeys, as far as money goes, as far as reimbursements go. I've seen a dramatic change. I know if I was asked 20 years ago what the average compensation or base compensation was for a surrogate, I was answering sometimes even 25,000, which is unimaginable today. But let's talk about just that base compensation. And for people who are listening, this is meant to also educate and help. So people who are looking into this journey. So with the base compensation, I hate using that word. That's why I'm struggling with using it. Because it's not compensation. She's not an employee. I want to be really clear. But I've seen a change. Have you seen a change? What have you seen with your agency over time?
So I'm in the same boat as you a little bit, that when I started this, it was sometimes as low as 20,000 actually. So it's increased at least double. And for my agency, we're doing all we can to keep that low. But I'm watching our field change, and my colleagues are increasing their fees as high as sometimes I'm seeing $80,000 or more for that compensation. And how I kind of think of base compensation is that I know when you have a contract, you have to have consideration. And so for me, the compensation that they're receiving as the base is really what they're being paid to honor the contract and to follow their responsibilities of the contract. And for those things that they're going to suffer, they're going to put their life on hold. We ask them to really plan for 2 years of putting their life on hold. And so that's the financial kind of reimbursement that we see. So again, 10 years ago, it was around 20,000 for that compensation. And now for my agency, it's 50, and I'm seeing numbers going up to sometimes double that. Um, and I understand some of the reasons why. I pay attention to what the carriers are saying, why they feel that that's a valid increase for them. And for some of those things, I agree. If we're talking about them being financially compensated for the risk that they're taking to do this journey on behalf of someone else, a stranger really, when they start, then I can see why those numbers are increasing over time. And especially as surrogates are becoming more connected with one another, more educated about what becoming a surrogate really means and the effects that it can have on your physical, emotional life and the life of that of your family. So I'm never saying that those increases aren't warranted, only that we've really watched them in a short amount of time double and then some. And at some point, we've started to see that be unattainable for families to use gestational surrogacy as a means to grow their family, because the base compensation alone is putting it out of reach for them financially.
I've seen 85,000 multiple times. You're right. It's a balancing act. It's one of those things where I think to myself, what would I want in order to put my life on hold for 2 years? Well, a lot more than that, probably. Right. So, I mean, it's one of those things where you have to really stop and think. But, I don't know what the balancing point is. I guess this is part of the hard conversation between, yes, it makes it unachievable for families, but do they have a right to do it if they can't give her enough to justify it? Do they have a right to demand that surrogates take less? Probably not. Um, the balance of power and, like you said, surrogates are getting more educated.
Right.
Intended parents are educated. Not always, but a lot of times. We'd like everybody to do a lot more education. I guess I'll put that out there. But when we say educated, we're also talking about social media,
Yeah.
right? We're really talking about just the whole world has access to more information now.
And that's why, on the social media aspect of that, we've got some really helpful social media groups, mostly through Facebook, that surrogates, intended parents, professionals like ourselves are able to join to learn about best practices, to see what's happening in our community, and stay on top of the relevancy of what our packages are offering and other kind of hot topics and issues that are going on in the work that we do. And that is, I really do think, a benefit for, in this specific case, for surrogates to share their stories with one another and to make sure that they're working with agencies that are ethical and that also are doing best practices and following what the standard trends are. So there can be a great benefit to those groups as well. And I'm in some of those groups, and I think most of the agencies in those groups are collaborative people who are not there to talk about our own agencies, but we're there to try to provide some helpful information for those people seeking details about best practices. But what I also learned from those groups is what those trends are. And most of the time, it's really great information that's being shared. And sometimes there's worrisome information that's happening there as well, from people who may not be as connected as they should be to the whole surrogacy community, so that they're seeing an overall big picture of what benefits look like and not just a sliver of what information might be provided in these documents that we're sharing with surrogates and parents. So for the base compensation to go up is understandable, but along with that, everything on the benefits packages, all of those financial incentives or fees that they're paid along the way, reimbursements, it's all increasing at a drastic rate. I think even over the, like I said, sort of post height of COVID, over the last 3 years, we're seeing really steep increases at a rapid rate there.
It's interesting because I struggle with it as a lawyer. So when people ask me about this, I do a lot of both agency and independent surrogacy. So the independent surrogacies give me some some vision, some light that I don't get in my agency adoptions, right? Or adoption surrogacies. Goodness, Kim. And in my independence, I really encourage them, just increase that base compensation and get rid of some of these small ancillary reimbursements and expenses, because they don't have anybody assisting them, and less interaction is better for them, right? Where they don't have to deal with escrow as often, they don't have to deal with receipts as often. But that is part of where we struggle when I try to explain it to people about why agency surrogacies look this way, why they do it this way, because independence always goes, well, that makes more sense. I'll just give her more base compensation, more on a monthly basis to cover all the things she might encounter in being pregnant, right? Because at some point, it's not so let's explain to the public. We've got base compensation, and then these ancillary things we're talking about, they are for all the incidental things that could possibly happen. So possibly if she's put on bed rest, that's a very exceptional thing. That is something that should always be dealt with in its own package. But then there's all the things that could possibly happen in a pregnancy, right? A C-section, different medical procedures, amniocentesis, different testing, different procedures, and agencies. The trend, which you really can't get away with not doing because you won't survive, right? Everybody puts and attaches a price to each of those. But at some point, what is the base compensation for? It's for getting pregnant and all the inconveniences that come with pregnancy, right? So with independence, they always look at me and go, I don't understand. Like, aren't I giving her this big chunk of money? So why to be pregnant? And these are things that happen when you're pregnant. And at what point does she assume the risks of being pregnant and the things that come with it as part of that base compensation?
Right.
And here's what it reminds me of. And I know you struggle with this because you're seeing all those go up and you don't want them to necessarily. Um, It's like the airline industry almost. This is what I don't want it to be. And this probably sounds really tacky, Dawn, but and you can soften my edges after I say this, but it's like, oh, look how cheap your ticket is. It's only this. But by the time you get done and you've picked your seat and paid for your suitcase and paid for everything else, and on those discount airlines now it's the drinks and everything else, the ticket was far more expensive than paying for an all-inclusive ticket,
Right.
right?
Absolutely. And I know your edges are soft already. So I get the analogy, and I think that most people watching, get this as well. The difference between, flying a luxury airline versus some of the kind of budget airlines that you pay just an entrance fee to step on the plane, kind of thing, right? So that stuff happens, and I am seeing now more agencies trying out an all-inclusive package for the GC. So we already know that happens in the surrogacy agency community for intended parents, because it's sort of the issue of all of these tiny expenses being really hard to follow and manage and track, right? And I'm seeing agencies now start to do this. Some may have been doing for a while, but I'm seeing a lot more discussion about it online in social media about all-inclusive packages for the surrogate as well. And I've thought quite a bit about that, over this past year, and I'm just not able to get there yet, because I can put myself in the surrogate's position and want to know what are these payments including, and the compensation that comes as the base. That's a broader risk than some of the small amounts that they're being reimbursed for or covered for in the rest of the benefits package. So for me and for the women that I have in my program, they're asking those detailed questions. They're not asking, hey, what's the lump sum and can you give me a list of what's included? They are educated, they're intelligent, they're curious, and they want to engage us in conversations about line items. And it means something to them that they know and understand each one of those items. And the parents that I work with, they also want to know, what are we paying for specifically, and not just kind of a lump sum. As we know with surrogacy, things happen along the way. And when you have to do an all-inclusive package, you need to make your package high enough that it's going to cover those cases where something drastic may have happened, so that it can be this all-inclusive cost. And then that passes extra cost along in those journeys where there hasn't been anything catastrophic, where it's been a smooth journey. Somebody pays for the difference of that, right? And so far, the parents that I have and the surrogates I have, they want a detailed, itemized list of those things that are paid and what they're paying for if they're an intended parent. So I haven't been able to get on board with the all-inclusive, pay for that luxury ticket and know that everything is included for you, because of those questions like, okay, well, all drinks are included and you get 2 free alcoholic beverages. Well, what if I don't drink alcohol? What if I don't want a beverage? What if I'm only bringing a carry-on and I don't need 2 free check bags? You're paying for all of that inclusive service, even if you don't need it or want it. So I think that's the balance that we're all looking for, how to help everyone understand what these numbers mean, and to make sure that we're finding a way to make the surrogate feel appreciated and valued, respected for what she's doing, but also make it so that it's still affordable for families that are in need. And that's becoming less and less of an option for so many families, domestically and internationally. So those devils are in the details, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's a good point, because a lot of times those independent matches, when I push to get rid of some of the ancillary stuff, it's usually that I push for not all of them. The biggest one where I kept saying, well, I already said it, bed rest over here, because it is its own beast. If she is placed on bed rest, it is on both sides, no matter who I'm representing at the time. I'm like, it is the most difficult thing she will go through, and it'll be one of the most expensive things you go through. But it would be if it happens to you yourself also, if you're put on bed rest. It's not cheap and it's not easy. So it's just that we divide up those two items amongst more people, I guess is a good way to put it. But it is, there seems to be a lot of debate and a lot of controversy behind how and what expenses are dealt with or reimbursed for bed rest. How does your agency deal with it? Anything you've seen or tricks of the trade?
I wish I had some tricks of the trade. What I'm looking at now is um, yet another revision of our benefits package. So we just completed that, and I know that at the end of last year, you and I worked on my benefits package a bit together so that I could have the best possible package as well. But I think what I'm seeing is really in those nitty gritty details that are part of what makes it hard to not be tempted to just have a solid base compensation that includes a little bit more. So, what I'm trying to remember is that some of these expenses on that itemized package happen before a surrogate's receiving base compensation, right? So those have to be listed. Anything that happens prior to receiving base compensation. Once base compensation started, then I do see some of those really hot, controversial topics being at what point should the surrogate be paid in full? I'm very careful, and I encourage all agencies just to remove any language from their benefit package that talks about survivorship of the baby. Survivor.
You want me to go on my soapbox about it?
You share this
Soapbox, yeah, it's a shared soapbox.
because that really is part of it. A big discussion with a two-time surrogate with my agency, who we have a great relationship, a very transparent and open conversations. I bounce a lot of things off of her to see how she feels about that. And one of the conversations was about how many weeks should a surrogate be before she is vested, before she receives the full amount of that base payment. And it's really a hot topic in those compensation groups. And the difference of one day can make the difference of whether the surrogate is paid in full for her compensation or if it's prorated only to the date that she delivers, right? And that's been a big divisive topic in the surrogacy groups regarding that date, how many weeks that should stop. So, and
I noticed you changed yours.
I did. I lowered mine.
What's your thinking behind that?
My thinking behind that is that most of the surrogates really were talking about what happens after as well. So oftentimes when there is an early delivery like that, the surrogate may spend quite a bit of time in the hospital, or she's had some type of complication that may make it where she doesn't heal quickly. Her life doesn't get back on track as quickly as it would with a full-term delivery. My hesitation was because then now the parents, in reality, they have a baby often and most likely at these gestational weeks in the NICU. So I had to mentally and emotionally separate the worry about the baby in the NICU and the expense of that for the parents and what the surrogate will be going through to have delivered early and what that's going to feel like for her emotionally and physically. And so I didn't drop it very far, but I did drop it enough where I think that it's being respectful to the surrogate to say, your journey didn't end how you wanted it to. I know a lot of those preterm deliveries are out of the surrogate's control. They're medical things that may happen just from it being an IVF pregnancy in the first place. And so I really had to separate that because for me, I just wanted to increase the number because of what happens on the parent's side. Baby in the NICU, additional expenses, last minute change of travel plans to try to get to the delivery and all of that that comes with that on the financial side. But I don't want to put the burden of that financial situation for the parents onto the surrogate. So it was a tough decision for me, and I put it off for a really long time. But again, that's part of paying attention to what's happening with surrogates. What they're saying is important to them, where they're saying they didn't feel cared for or valued by their agency or by the parents, because this is an experience that's happening to them as well. these early deliveries, these hospital bed rest prior to delivery, trying to keep the baby healthy and keep the baby in utero as long as possible. There's a hardship there sometimes for the surrogate as well that we weren't paying attention to. And so I had to split my focus and realize that the financial issue that happens for the parents with an early delivery isn't directly tied to what the surrogate herself is going through during that too. So that's why I decreased that.
Right. I'll tell you, looking across the board, because I see so many different packages, I don't know that there's as much thought put into it by a lot of programs that should be really putting that additional thought process into it. It's almost a pick a number out of the air and throw it at the wall and see if it sticks. And which is fine, but what I always tell people is, when this comes to me, when the benefit package comes to me, and I have to write a contract, my goal, some people think my goal is to just take this rubber stamp it, stick it in my contract, and move on. That's not what I'm supposed to do. My initial goal is don't destroy the match, but always check a package and always check whether I think things are fair and reasonable. And some agencies try to trap people and make them sign ahead of time and sign off saying that they will not change any of these numbers. But you don't do that. You're very careful to talk about negotiations and that there'll be a legal contract and et cetera. And I don't know if that's through, well, I know it's through experience, but
it's because, and it's the same thing we tell parents desperately want a bottom line. And we know why. This is extraordinarily expensive. And when they're meeting a surrogate, they haven't gotten to know her. She's not known to them as this amazing, incredible, beautiful human who's going to help them. They have to consider the financial side as well. It's not like, oh, we love her so much, we'll do anything, right? It's someone that they don't know yet. And so they have to look at the financial package along with her profile and everything else about her to decide if they want to go forward. And it's really daunting when they start to see those big numbers, because we also include things that they're not going to hopefully pay for, C-section fees, long-term bed rest, and catastrophic issues that may come up. But they have to see those numbers, and we have to be transparent to say to them, this may happen. It's unlikely, but it may, and you need to be financially prepared for that and emotionally prepared as well. So they want a bottom line. Just tell me how much so I can minimize my risk and I can know how much I need. And that's really not the reality. Unless you're trying an all-inclusive program, which I just don't think works well, then the parents really want to know. And so we have to burst their little bubble, because it's not how it works at my agency and most agencies that I know and collaborate with. We want our parents to know that things can happen along the way, and that the surrogate herself is a human being, and this is a very human process. This isn't a process that can be locked down in the beginning like that. We get it estimated as close as we possibly can through our years of experience, through our interactions and collaborations with our attorneys that we work with. You've been so helpful to me to kind of have a realistic look at what these costs can be in the end and what I've been missing and things like that over the course of these years. But in the end, we aren't a party to the contract. And that's something I have to remind myself, like literally out loud every day. This is not our contract. This is not our story. It's not our journey. It's not our story. We're not a part of this. It's the surrogate and the parent and what they find realistic and what they find financially manageable and what they want to do. And we're not going to stand in their way if they both agree, as long as we know that there's no coercion, as long as we know that we've done our job to discuss the reasons why, which is why it's so important that you can explain why you have certain numbers, right? Because sometimes parents and surrogates say, why can't I have survivorship information in there? And we talk about why that's not ethical to include that kind of information. And so in the end, in our package, we have very clear information written and required, initialed, and signed that says that this is just a starting out point. It's a match point, and that changes can be made by both parties. They're fully aware that it could lead to a match break if their requests are outside of what might be considered the norm, best practices and standards for our field. And that's why choosing attorneys to work with you to understand your benefits package, to make sure that they also can defend your benefits package to their clients, is important as well. And so in the end, we say, we're going to do a final journey projection. So around 24 weeks of pregnancy, if something catastrophic has happened, then we can tell the parents, because of this, the estimation has changed, right? And this is why and how it will affect you. And then our final note really is that we just say it's important to understand that not all of these fees may be applicable, and that absolutely they can make changes. It's a review of fees that will be used to initiate the legal contract. And they both have to sign acknowledging that it's not a legal contract and the amounts that we provided are estimates. And that gives room for the surrogate's attorney and the IP's attorney to represent fully their client. Because we get involved and start saying, you can't change this, you can't do that, then we talk a lot in our field about staying in our lanes, right? If you collaborate well with your attorneys that you're working with, then you can let them stay in their lane and you can stay in yours because you trust them and know they're going to do the best job for their client. But I'm clear that you represent the parent. When I send you a parent, when I send you a surrogate, you represent her and you will absolutely do what you find to be in her best interest. And I try to stay out of it, knowing that they're all consenting adults, right? And that they can say yes or no to their attorney. I don't agree to that. That's not what my agency explained to me. Why is the parent wanting to change that? And they're able to, share their opinions with their attorneys and decide what's possible for them, what they're going to agree to or not agree to. And if they reach out to us and ask us, we'll share our opinions with them as well, and why we have it a certain way in our benefits package and explain to them what that means. And then they can choose from there and advise their own attorney what they want to do next. And sometimes, thankfully, it's just been almost 11 years. We've had, I can't even think of any that we've had, though I'm sure we must have, where we've had a match break on some type of contract change that was suggested. But most of the time we don't, because we're preparing everyone in advance. That at the time of match, this benefits package is meant to make everyone feel secure and safe. We give everyone an opportunity to change it before match. So surrogates see this package more than once throughout the course of their intake process and have opportunity to change it before we share it with a parent. And the same thing happens on the intended parent side. They've seen this. If they have questions, they can ask us, well, why is it this amount of weeks that they get to get all the money when they weren't pregnant anymore? We can answer those questions and give them a level of comfort. Then when we get in front of you, you can do your job, right?
Well, that's an important part of it, because it is best practices. There are a significant number of agencies that make people sign saying they won't make any changes in the legal contract. That is unenforceable. I'm lucky enough that I have a state that talks about how both sides have to be represented by independent lawyers for the contract phase. Some states, it's silent, but there aren't any attorneys that don't believe that do this area of law. And if you have them sign something like that, and you have them sign saying they won't change anything once they get legal counsel, that's an unenforceable gestational carrier agreement, essentially. That's what it just became. And it was non-compliant with the law. So I get to change it all I want. My goal, like I said, is not to destroy matches. I don't go in with the intent of going, all right, what's up every one of these numbers? Let's make all of this, right? That's not the goal. But agencies that are doing this, that are making people sign off that they won't make a single change. And then what happens is, when my client knows a change needs to be made and I know a change needs to be made, we get a response from the opposing party from the opposing attorney saying, nope, this is what's in the benefit package. You don't get to change it. Yeah. Baloney. Yeah. This is about negotiations. And so good packages, I don't have to do that with yours. I'm not going through making changes because I know you've worked so hard at your numbers. But there are things, let me look real quick at what you've got for housekeeping, childcare. So,
too. Yeah. Really relevant. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really relevant right now. And here's the thing. This is how it comes to me. I'll tell people, look, you can have the world's best benefit package and it's still not going to apply to everybody in the world. Like, it can't apply to every client you're ever going to have. Why? Because let's look at childcare. You can have two surrogates. One has teenagers. Well, let's do three because this will be more fun. One has teenagers who can drive themselves, which means they can also stick a sandwich in their own mouth and get themselves to sports activities, right? Childcare needed? No. Surrogate who has teenagers, and people, intended parents always go, well, she has teenagers, she doesn't need childcare. I go, but do they drive? No. Are they in sports? Because God help us, every family with teenagers are in like 10 sports these days and extracurricular activities, right? And can they get themselves there? No. Okay, well, then she may need assistance with that. Or the surrogate with 3 children under 5 years old, right? That one, we could take a standard child care amount that's in an average package. So what do you have in yours?
Ours right now for childcare, let me dig around in there. I think it's 300 a
It's
week.
right at, yeah. So 300 a week, but if you have 3 children,
Right.
bingo, it's not going to work, right? And you have a great package.
Right.
So this is what I tell people when they come to me and go, well, aren't you just sticking it in there? No, I'm not. I've got to look at the specific circumstances because this was built to apply to all your clients. And now it's my job to apply it to these people
Yeah.
and their circumstances.
Absolutely.
Housekeeping, a surrogate with no one at home living with her is very different from a surrogate who's maybe spouse can maybe clean. I don't know. Not all women will say their husbands can clean or their wives can clean, but some will. But if you have somebody at home assisting, you need a different level of housekeeping assistance, right? And just the visceral reaction sometimes you get from people, it's our job to take it to the next level and explain it.
Yeah.
And when you have done that kind of work, my job is so much easier. I have some people who the first time they ever saw the benefit package is when it was sent to me and I sent it to them. And they had never seen it before that, before legal. And they have no idea what any of this is about or why. They don't have the foundational understanding of why we even pay housekeeping. And they haven't heard the storyline of you want to encourage compliance with the doctor's orders, and a woman sitting there staring at a dirty toilet despite doctor's orders may still get up and clean the darn toilet because she can't take it anymore.
And that's with the housekeeping part, just as an example, that's a recent change, and it seems like I think my last iteration was they get 36 weeks they can start housekeeping, and I just dropped that a little lower. And the reason why I put that at all pre-delivery is because we were having surrogates that needed that. They needed help. They were not on official bed rest, so we didn't have a bed rest order, but they were finding it very difficult in those last month or two to really maintain their home and their household. And for them, I think we just kind of put this automatic before delivery so that as they're moving into delivery, they're less stressed. They have a safe and clean home for themselves and for their children. They're not taking those unnecessary risks. Without an order for bed rest, she can continue to do her daily activities, right? Unless her OB is telling her, get off your feet, you can't do it, and we need it in writing, then she needs to have help. The other alternative is that she says to her OB, hey, I can't do these normal daily things anymore, and I need childcare and housekeeping.
And lost weight.
Bed rest order. Right.
Everything.
It all. Bed rest. And instead we thought, maybe that balance we're always pursuing, right? Maybe the balance is to just have the parents provide her with some help in the home.
You're one of the few agencies. I mean, I have seen it in a few others where they provide it for like the last month of the pregnancy or the last so many weeks of the pregnancy, but very, very, very few. I've only seen it a couple of times. I think it's brilliant. I can tell you, I was wearing men's slippers and waddling like a duck and could barely move. There was nothing going to be cleaned in my house the whole entire last month because I'm so short that, the pregnancy was really overbearing. It was a lot for this short little body. I'm not tall. It wasn't spread out. It was all in front of me where I could topple over, and I
Can't
couldn't
lean
see
into the counter. Yeah.
no, I couldn't see the toilet. I couldn't see. I wore men's slippers to court. That's how bad it
Oh,
was.
I would like a picture of that.
I wish I had taken. I was so upset about having to go to court.
To do that when you're pregnant. So, it's the balance. It's to show a surrogate that we value her, that we understand the position that she's in, especially in those last couple weeks of what that's like for her. And then the parents that I work with haven't pushed back about adding that pre-delivery because they're wanting her to have low stress. They're wanting her to take it easy. And you can't always take it easy. So instead of getting a bed rest order from the doctor when she really just needed a little support, we're adding that support, and the parents are happy to do that. It's not an exorbitant amount of money. It's reasonable, and as long as it can stay reasonable, we can keep doing that. So I think little changes like that are what this last version of our package represents. Just some small changes along the way that the parents will understand why the change was made, and the surrogate will feel more supported.
Well, there's a lot of forethought in that, and it's important. I think it's real hard though. I think it's difficult for agencies to shine when there's such subtle changes that were so important that without a podcast for an hour explaining why it's so thoughtful, that you don't necessarily show as thoughtful. People don't necessarily see it or know it or understand it when they look at your packages.
They're small. And I think that good agencies are always, when I have an IT person who puts all of our documents in, makes sure they can go out on our like electronic signatures and all of that. And so when I make a change, it's kind of a ripple through the whole company. Everybody sees that change and it has to get kind of implemented into our system. But I think that my point to my IT person, because I make changes sometimes I'm just fixing a typo that I didn't see for like 6 months, right? But when I make those changes, it's important that my IT person who helps me with that understands that this and the agency agreement as well are living documents. They're going to change. And it's important that agencies are paying attention to what surrogates are trying to tell us about what they feel that their needs are, that we're also having what it takes to explain to the surrogate as to the reasons why we do or don't do it a certain way in our benefits packages or in our agreements. But these documents should be updated regularly. And we should all be really paying attention, including not just looking on social media at what the trends are and the relevancy is, but meeting with the attorneys that we work with, other agencies that we may collaborate with, to really find out what's happening in the surrogacy community, to make sure that our documents are always up to date, best practices, most relevant, and that everyone that we're helping understands why the changes were made. Because change is really scary, but I'm learning to lean into it. But for parents and for surrogates, it's really concerning when there's been a change and they need to know why. They want to know why that change was made, and we should have a good reason, not just kind of because I heard my friend that owns an agency, she changed this or she changed that. We need to be able to explain why those changes were made.
Yeah, and agencies need to lean into advice, because I'll get clients coming and asking me before they sign the agency agreement, will you review this for me? Sure. Okay, well, this one is completely disorganized, repeats itself, contradicts itself, and has major grammar problems. And they say, no, this can't be changed. Well, if you've got grammar problems, why should anybody sign your document? Little grammar is not a big deal. Benefit packages doesn't matter, but I'm talking about mass amounts of errors in agency agreements that I'm seeing. And leaning into advice and change is important. It's important for all of us. my document, my contract has changed 1 trillion times over the years. And I just in the past year went from 58 pages down to what am I now? I think 42 pages of contract, because I scrutinized every word to decide if it was too lawyer-like or too wordy, as a lawyer is always. So and that's how much wordiness I had, overly wordiness. So
My,
I appreciate the efforts, is I guess the point of all of that. I really appreciate it.
yeah.
It makes a difference.
Yeah. My agency agreements on both sides have shrunk a bit as well, because the last sort of filter I used was what is enforceable? What's standard and reasonable? That's one thing. What's the best practice is another thing. And what's enforceable? What am I, not only is it legally enforceable, but what am I willing to enforce? What does my time and my focus mean to me to pursue something that I might have had in my agency agreement? So you kind of have to look at all three of those filters on your documents, and hopefully they're not growing. They're staying the same, or they're shrinking a bit as we really learn what we're willing to enforce or not, or what is legally enforceable or not. And, we have enough of bad attention on our field right now, always, but especially now, that we need to make sure that we're not contributing to the chaos in our field, but that we're very clear about what our documents mean, the intent behind each thing that we say, understanding there's a difference between saying and or saying or, little words like that can change what they mean, and have attorneys that we trust and that we work with look at our agreements to advise us what that kind of the ramifications of our words are. And then recently too, is to have contract attorneys that specialize in contract law look at your agreement as well, because it's a different lens than someone that's within our field is looking at them. So have living documents, I think, that can change with the times, and then really look for balance and for reasons why you're making changes, and so that you can stand behind your changes.
I love it. All right. All good advice. I appreciate you so much. Before we take off, will you let everybody know how they can find you, find U.S. Surrogacy, all that fun stuff?
Our website is us-surrogacy.com. You can find us there. We have a contact us page as well. We also are on Instagram and most social media. I think that's posted maybe in your link for this podcast, but come and see us. And if all you do is look at all the new baby photos and makes your day happier, then that's okay with me too. But if you'd like to speak with someone from my team, you can reach us through our contact us form on our website. And we also have our contact information on our Instagram and my LinkedIn.
Well, I adore you and I appreciate you every day. It's amazing to work with good agencies.
There's a bunch of us. There's a whole bunch of us, and we're all doing our very best. And we appreciate the opportunity to get in front of our peers and colleagues and talk about all this. Make sure that we're sharing what we know and also learning as well. So thank you so much.
Welcome. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this episode of Surrogacy Warrior. I hope you found our discussion enlightening and empowering. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, leave a review. Your feedback helps. Let us know what other listeners, what other people you want us to bring onto the show. Stay connected with us on social media and visit our website at www.lawyersforfamilies.com. and for more resources and updates on surrogacy all the time. Remember, you're not alone in this journey. Together, we are warriors. Until next time, stay strong and keep fighting for your dreams.
You've been tuning into the Surrogacy Warrior podcast with your host, Kimberly Surratt. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, lawyersforfamilies.com. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.